Good evening and welcome. We do have a work session scheduled this evening before our regular meeting. We're going to talk about the Radford Electric Department and some things that are going on. So part of this work session is going to be an open session here in council chambers and streaming. Then we're going to have to stop that portion of the meeting and go into closed session because we are discussing some bargaining possibilities for the city as we look toward our next electric contract. So at this time, I'm going to ask Tim Logwood to take over the meeting. He's got a PowerPoint presentation. He's our director of the Radford Electric Department. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Council, for allowing me to present today, and thank you, David Ridpath, for allowing me to do that. The first part's just going to be a broad, informative on a few things, so if you have questions, go ahead and ask as I go through the presentation. So, one thing we're going to discuss here is our affiliated memberships. System overview, our current power supply, future power supply, miscellaneous topics. Some of the memberships we're involved with, we'll go through these individually, but American Public Power Association, Municipal Electric Power Association of Virginia, and the Blue Ridge Power Association. And I have my partner in crime on the phone with me, Alice Wolf from the Blue Ridge Power Agency. Alice, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Tim.
Okay. Alice, is there anything you want to say right now, or do you want to wait till the Blue Ridge screen comes up?
I'll just wait till the Blue Ridge screen if that's okay.
That's certainly fine. So, if you're not familiar, the American Public Power Association is kind of a national organization for public power advocates at the federal level, over 1,400 members. They provide operational resources, safety manuals, advice on reliability, cybersecurity, all sorts of information from an operational level. One of the biggest things they also provide, they coordinate disaster recovery among all these members. And I back up with the state of Virginia, so I sit in, Zoom a lot of these meetings. It's good to have those folks available in case we do need them. We'll get them in and help us out. So you can find more at publicpower.org of what they do. At the state level, Municipal Electric Power Association of Virginia. State organization, mainly dealing with the state legislature and the laws that might impact electric municipals. Sorry. We have 16 members in Virginia. We do an annual engineering operations workshop, and we also provide mutual aid kind of at a state level. We've had to send crews down to Franklin and down to Danville. And MEPAV, www.mepav.org.
Cool.
Is that an automatic thing that when there's an emergency, this agency goes into effect to say, hey, we think we're going to have an ice storm in Danville, or we think there's going to be an ice storm in Radford. How can we mobilize? Is that what that agency typically does?
Yes, it does. We'll get on the phone ahead of time, try to make some plans and kind of monitor the situation. Being in Virginia, sometimes a storm can impact all of us.
Right.
So we have to kind of wait and see what happens, but,
right.
Then we can react to it.
Okay.
Right. Jenny, we're not advancing here. No. Yeah, that's next. Thank you.
Alice, you might just have to proceed without figuring out what's going on. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to let Alice do this slide, and she can add anything to it that she wants. Go ahead, Alice, if you'd like to introduce yourself and the agency. So.
Thank you. When you something just happened and minimized, but anyway, I can see the screen. So thank you first of all for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I really appreciate you making it possible for me to attend by Zoom. So I'm very appreciative of that. Alice Wolf with Blue Ridge. Blue Ridge is a nonprofit organization, and we're essentially a cooperative. So the members join together to get better economies of scale in hiring legal and engineering consultants, in purchasing power, and then in negotiating contracts. So it's a very effective model for small and medium-sized utilities like Radford. Blue Ridge has only 2 employees, so you now have met 50% of the workforce. We do charge dues to each of our members that, allow us our salaries and our benefits and allow us to run the organization. But the engineering and legal costs that are shared, those are charged as is. So there's no markup on those. So really, in terms of how Blue Ridge operates, we're neutral on what decisions Radford makes in its power supply. It doesn't affect the organization directly, so it allows us to be an independent voice for you. I do want to say I've really enjoyed working with Tim these last 7 years. I've never worked in electric distribution utility, and I'm not an electrical engineer, so he is very patient with my questions, so I deeply appreciate that. And on behalf of the other members, I want to say that we're really glad to have the city of Radford as a member of the organization. I think Radford is one of the founding members. So just glad to be able to work with you for this time and hope to continue that relationship in the future.
Thank
So
you.
I think-
Thank you, Alice. Will you let us know who the municipal and co-op members are? We have some new members of council, and I want to make sure this is a really crucial part of the electric presentation I want everybody to be able to experience.
Sure, absolutely. So the members are Bedford, Front Royal, Martinsville, Radford, Richlands, Salem, Virginia Tech Electric Service, Craig Botetourt Electric Cooperative, and Central Virginia Electric Cooperative.
And do you have any numbers on what the total number of customers served are for the 9 members?
Yeah, I do. Let me pull it up real quick. I should have it memorized, but I don't have it memorized.
The reason I ask is this is so important because this is what allows us to get such a good deal for the citizens of Radford. By partnering with all these groups, we get a better economy of scale than if we went out and bought power just with the 16 to 18,000 people that live here being served. And so that's a real important part of this. And a lot of folks don't understand that we're part of a larger group that are bargaining together to try to make this work for the city.
Absolutely. So the total Blue Ridge members serve about 94,000 meters. So that's about 200,000 customers total.
So just to reiterate, so Radford's 16 to 18,000 total people there is part of that 200,000 group or so.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alice.
Pleasure.
I want to talk a little bit about our system. We have 3 feeds from Appalachian Power. One is a 1.1 mile feed that was put in service in 1998. It's a 138,000 volt line, comes in across towers down near Ingle Street. And the 138 volt line gets transformed down to our subs transmission voltage in our station. And that's voltage is 34,500 volts. And we have 12 distribution stations throughout the city that take the 34.5 down to 4,000, or 4 kV as we call it, that we serve 7,500 customers. So the lines in your neighborhood are basically 4 kV. We have a hydroelectric plant on Little River, if you know where that is. And we also, probably in 1998, started putting in fiber optic communications. We ran it through all the cities and school buildings and city departments. But that's a shared. This is a map of the system. We essentially are currently operating. We kind of, out of 2 feeds, we separate the city in half. The 3rd feed, what fed the old castings plant, now just serves 1 customer. And again, the 138 line comes in down to Ingle Station. There's been some conceptual discussions with Appalachian Power. They are trying to eliminate certain voltages on their distribution system. One of the things they are proposing is eliminating our oldest feed. They're doing away with that. That comes out of Dublin. It's not part of their transmission voltage, so is something we're in consultation and in discussions with APCO. So That's a map of our distribution circuit. We do serve out in the counties, Pulaski County out in Fairlawn, and the long line down there past our hydro out in Montgomery County. Our current power supply arrangement, Appalachian Power, our hydro plant, and we get a little bit of power from the Southeastern Power Administration. And I'll explain who they are. As you can see here, the majority of our power comes from Appalachian Power, 96%, about 3% from our hydro facility, and about 1% from a hydro facility of Southeastern Power Administration. This is a map of Southeastern Power Administrations there in Virginia. That's the Carr and Philpott dams. That's kind of where our resources come from. Who is SEPA? The federal government-owned system, Department of Energy owns it, and it's operated by the Corps of Engineers. And we're considered one of 491 preference customers. There's 12, the MEPAV members all get a portion of the power. We get a little, capacity-wise, we get a little bit more than what our own hydro is, 1.3 megawatts, but we get energy compared to our hydro is not that much. So 3-year average of what we're getting there and the 3-year average annual cost of what we pay for the SEPA power. Little River Dam, we did a turbine rehab, was completed in January of 2019. This same year, we received a 40-year operating license from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Just some numbers on generation to date. So over the 4 years so far, we've saved about $1.3 million in wholesale power costs. I put a safety item up there. I've been battling FERC a little bit. I think some of you may know, they want us to put in a redundant gate hoist as for safety. If that hoist were to fail, we really don't have a way to open up the gates. So we had a study done this past year, and that was an item still left over from the previous study. They did add that we could have an alternate means of lifting a gate, so it broadens a little bit what we can do, but we're still pursuing that. And I'm still pursuing funding for that. There's a lot of dollars that I've just seen come out, some for hydro. So, but ultimately, it's FERC is making us do that. One of the things we did with Blue Ridge Power Agency and some of the other members, we began selling RECs, and that's from this plant and also the SEPA plant. I think back in 2020, and I think we've got, with our plant, we've got about $230,000, since we started that in revenue, REC revenue.
For the new members of council, can you talk a little bit about what the RECs are and how we're able to sell those?
Sure. Renewable energy credits, there's a market for that. Our credits are sold in the Maryland market, and we've brokered through Blue Ridge somebody to handle that for us. And, he gets a small commission for doing that. But companies, corporations, to offset their carbon credits, they will buy renewable energy credits. And it offsets, their environmental concerns there. So, and we receive revenue from that. So, aerial view of the plant. And I think we're about to go into closed session.
All right, so before,
Sure.
that's what I was going to say. Will you turn your mic on?
How are the hoist gates opened? Are they electric? So you said you needed a backup, but
Yeah, let me see if that picture.
what's going to cause it to fail?
8 gates all the way across. We got one hoist that sits on top.
Okay, so it slides across and picks them up? Okay,
If the motor, it's electric motor. If the motor
Okay.
fails, we have a hand crank, but they're happened before. We've gotten the motor repaired or welded.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
You know, we went out the budget for one, but it's, you know, several $100,000. So.
Well, we wanted to take time to see if anybody else had questions before we go into closed session. So we can answer questions about this general portion of the presentation or things along that line in closed session. So if you have anything, now's the time.
Yes, I've got a question.
Sure.
You mentioned a small commission. So approximately how much is that?
It's a 7%.
7%?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So again, you know, one of the neatest things about having the dam is it does allow us to generate some power, and one of the pieces that I've always appreciated, and maybe you can address this a little bit, is when we start getting up some of those peak capacities during really hot or really cold periods, how the dam can really affect things. Can you talk about how that makes a difference and how that affects the power purchase?
Sure. You know, I've been here 31 years, and we've always peak shaved with it. The reservoir builds up in summers, we run it in hot afternoons. In the winters, we run it in the morning. So it is a run of the river. So as long as we have water, we'll run it, you know, as much as we can. The new turbine upgrade is more efficient, so we can kind of run it at lower levels of water for a longer duration, and we're getting more energy out of it.
So overall, a good investment, saving the citizens money, but also providing renewable energy here in Radford, which is a great thing. Any other questions before we go into closed session? Okay. So as such, Seth, if you will take us into closed session.
I make a motion to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the government unit would be adversely affected. Virginia Code Section 2.2-311A6.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second to go into closed session? Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So this time, if you'll stop the